We're ranking all 4 precons from worst to best, from murders at Karlov Manor.
I'm Mia, and I like to drink coffee at 8 p.m.
I'm Beezy. That impression of whatever I was doing was horrible. We're the Nitpicking Nerds, sponsored by Card Kingdom, their website.
They are a website, and if you use our link in the description below, you can tell them that we send you and get all of these precons for a low price, which we'll tell you about a little bit later.
I'd say that's a pretty good deal. If you're looking to pick up cards on a website and you need a recommendation, 1000% I'm recommending Card Kingdom from now until forever.
We love them, absolutely.
Also sponsored by Dragon Shield. I beat Mia to it because they have the best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
And you honestly would be missing out in such a tremendously colossal way if you didn't go use the code
NERDS
at checkout to save 5% when you order with Dragon Shield.
Beezy's the smoothest man. Also, we have a Moxfield ad somewhere in the video. You can't guess where it is. If you did, you lied. And today we are going to be covering so many parts of the new precons at Murders at Karlov Manor. We're going to be covering Commander, Game Plan, Best Reprints, Best New Cards, Budget Ads, Non-Budget Ads, and the Cuts.
Yeah, so this is just a full-on review, top to bottom, from all of these precons. We are going to go over them from worst to best, so you know which ones we think are the best buys and which ones we think are the best like decks out of the box. We just want to mention before we get started that all 4 precons, if you wanted to buy them in a bundle on Card Kingdom, it's $180. So that's sort of our baseline. We will go after we talk about all 4 precons to tell you what they are individually if you want to add that up, but this is obviously the bargain price, so keep 180 in your mind. We're going to start off with the very worst of these 4 precons, kind of by a mile. This is Deadly Disguise. The price of this precon, if you wanted to buy it individually, is $43.99 on Card Kingdom, which is of course the best place to be buying this. There's no other alternative. The commander is Kaust, Eyes of the Glade. This is white-red hybrid green for a 2/2. Whenever a creature you control that's turned face up this turn deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, and you can tap it and turn target face down attacking creature you control face up. This is a morph commander in Naya, which nobody expected from this set, but it's really also Disguise, which is a mechanic where you can cast creatures face down as 2/2s with Ward 2 instead of just Morph, which was no abilities.
Disguise is just better morph, and there are things like Conceal, I think? Is
Cloaking?
Cloaking,
Instead
there
of
we go.
manifesting, we cloak things.
Yeah, so there are going to be a lot of these similar keywords thrown around in this deck. However, this deck has some really good reprints. The best ones are totaling up to $54. The first one is worth $25, and it's Jessica's Will.
Yeah, didn't expect to just see Jessica's Will thrown in. This is not a card they reprint very often.
Absolutely, but I am happy to see that the Wills, I guess, are being reprinted in more decks because LCI brought back a Chroma's Will, and that's like a really nice reprint too.
It's a sick one. We also got $15 for Seedborn Muse. It untaps all your stuff every single turn. This card is a linchpin of many strategies, and it sort of rose to popularity after Prophet of Kruvix got banned, which was a long time ago at this point. So it's been a very established player for a while.
I love Seaborn Muse in my elf deck, and it's going to be great here too. Toski, Bearer of Secrets, is also reprinted in this deck, and it's $6. That's a nice reprint, helping you with a little bit of card draw and a little creature to sneak in for some damage.
Yeah, this deck already wants to attack. It's a good card in the deck. Also, Neheb the Eternal, still a $5 card somehow, but it makes big mana when you connect for a ton of damage. So if this deck's looking to do that, that's a lot of mana. Or, just take it out of the deck, sell it, and put something else in.
It's still worth it. And $3 for Oran Frostfang, another great creature that gives your attacking creatures death touch and helps you draw cards.
That's a good little package they got between Oran Frostfang and Toski to draw cards in this deck. I do like it. It's just that this deck is just kind of bad, and we'll get to that in a second.
But moving on to the best new cards in here, this is one of my most favorite cards to have come out of this set. It's Unexplained Absence. 3 and a white for an instant. For each player, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls. For each permanent exiled this way, its controller cloaks the top card of their library. This type of 3-for-1 removal is something I'm really excited to see that they're bringing to this.
Yeah, I started reading this and I was like, another Oblivion Ring type thing. Nope, this is an instant. This is not enchantment, so forget that. But it doesn't give the cards back. It gives them a stupid 2/2, which they never wanted.
Especially in white too.
Yeah, white doesn't have these.
Yeah, so with like Druid of Purification, that was like pretty interesting considering it was the 4-for-1 or 3-for-1 depending on how people pick. But this is instant speed and hitting just any non-land permanent. That's a really good encompassment of removal.
You pay 1 more mana than a Generous Gift. You lose the ability to hit lands, which was a corner case anyway, and you gain the ability to hit 2 more things, so 3 things total, and giving them 6 power instead of 3 power with like an elephant. that seems pretty worth it to me. I'm excited about this one. You can Sunforger for it, too, so there's a little bonus.
Exile, too, not just destroy like
that's an
Generous Gift
upside.
might. There's also Show-Stopping Surprise, which I thought was pretty interesting. 3 red for an instant. Choose target creature you control. Turn it face up if it's face down. Then it deals damage equal to its power to each other creature. I think this is pretty interesting considering the creature doesn't have to be face down for this to trigger.
Yeah, forget that last part, or the middle part. Turn that face up if it's face down. That threw me off. It's just Genre's Ignition, but you can't hit players. So what it's going to do is if you have a big giant creature in play, you can hold this up, end step, fire it off, then untap, take your whole turn with no blockers in the way, and your biggest creature on the board. Everything else will die. If you have a 20/20, you're going to end up with no other creatures unless they're indestructible. But you still get your big thing to smash in, which is probably your commander.
The instant speed, too, is so nice. I'm not sure if we'd be smashing with our commander in this, considering we want our commander to turn things face up. And
Not in this deck, but in this card is good because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. In the Voltron decks, this is going to slap so much.
Yeah, it might be a card you just take out of this deck, because I don't know how big we're going, but yeah. Bolt Bender is another one. It's 3 red for a 4/2. It's got Disguise for 1 and a red. And when it's turned face up, you can choose new targets for any number of other spells and abilities, which is funny because I'm pretty sure Bolt Bend is the original version of this from Ravnica, from War of the Spark. So this is like a neat little take on that. I don't think it's going to be very good because it's 5 mana to change the target, but it is cool. It's like another Willbender type thing.
I think it's a pretty cool surprise, and especially in the deck that's trying to turn things face up anyways.
That's where you want it.
It could be really, really interesting and a good little gotcha.
So the biggest problem with this deck and why it's stuck at number 4 is just that Morph is not a very strong mechanic, but even further than that, we were looking and trying to upgrade it and put cards in, and it's like, oh, well, this, how about Jasmine Boreal? She gives your creatures with no abilities bonuses. No, because when you cloak a creature, it's got Ward 2, which is an ability. So, not every morph card works with every cloak and disguise card, and not every disguise card works with every morph card. So it's really hard to tie these together, and there's some payoffs that don't work, and some payoffs are going to be twice as bad or half as good, and it's just a lot of the cards in this deck are big clunkers, and I'm not really sure how we're supposed to win the game. There's good card draw, but other than that, it's just weird.
Overall, it's very clunky, and it's not the most easy to just get out gameplay, and I think the other decks do run a bit more smoothly than this one.
Yeah, I was all excited for this set, and it's like, oh my god, we got clues are back. Of course the clues are back. Cases, like a new kind of subtype of a card, kind of like a saga meets a class. And there's just all this stuff going on. And then it's like, also there's new morph with different text, and I'm like, oh, this was definitely the mechanic I think everybody was like, who cares? At least the commander players.
I don't want to see this sit across from me at the table because, oh, did you disguise it or did you cloak it or did you morph it?
Yeah, that's true.
And I'm gonna have to have a little infinite token written down of what each of that means and what I can do and can't do.
Just like Alquist Proft in this story. Okay, 5 budget adds. We're gonna add cards to this deck to make it better. Just because disguise and morph is confusing doesn't mean this deck can't be sweet when you upgrade it. We're gonna add Goblin Mask Maker is from the new set. It reduces the cost to turn these things face down.
There's also Expose the Culprit, which can turn things face up at instant speed for less mana than they usually would be. And they can also fizzle removal spells because they can blink things, which is really nice.
Yeah, Raid Bombardment, if you've got a bunch of face down morphs and cloaked whatevers, I don't know what to call these face down creatures. They're usually 2/2s. Yeah, face down guys. This is just extra damage when you attack, and it just can help close out games, a little non-combat stuff for you.
Ugin the Ineffable is another great one in this, considering it does reduce the morph cost by 2, and you're going to be having a lot of cost to pay in this deck.
Yeah, it reduces cloaking, disguising, whatever, disguising a morph, because when you cast it face down as a colorless 2/2 thing, Ugin sees that and reduces it, so it's only 1 for that. And Skittering Cicada gives your colorless spells, like morphs and disguises, flash, so you can do them instant speed and get some stuff done there. Those are 2 payoffs that do transcend the morph disguise gap.
But moving on to non-budget adds, one of them is Aurelia's Vindicator, a new card in this set. It counts as removal when it's face up, and it has disguise, so the morph itself, or morph I guess, has ward, and it has ward and lifelink and flies when it's turned up, so you can chip in for damage and gain a little bit of life back.
Yeah, we got Pyrotechnic Performer. It's got a cheap disguise cost, and that counts all the creatures that are turned face up when it does its effect.
There's also Unyielding Gatekeeper. It's a removal on a creature, but you can also get a benefit if you use it on your own stuff.
Yeah, Delny Streetwise Lookout. This is a good one. We're probably going to see it in the future in this video, but it's kind of like one of the chase mythics in the set, so it's kind of expensive, but it makes your morphs unable to be blocked by 3+ power creatures, and all your stuff that's small, which a lot of morph things and disguise things have an effect when they're faced up. When their power is 2 or less, it triggers again.
I really like this card. I want to see this in more decks because I think it's super cool to get those extra triggers and then also just having all of your morphs actually do something beforehand, because I feel like just like sitting 2/2s is not the best in the mid to late game, but once they can actually do something, that's like really fun. The last non-budget ad is one of BZ's favorites. It's Elven Chorus. We're going to need a lot of mana to be able to unmorph things and stuff, so why not use the morphs themselves to actually pay for those costs?
That's pretty cool. I like that you can go wide, and then now nobody really knows if you're holding anything up or not, because end step you can go tap my creatures for 7 total mana, turn 2 of them face up, or you think I'm tapped out? Nope, I'm going to have a response like the one we just talked about, Boltbender. I can now change the target of a spell without even having to tap my lands.
I think that leaves a little bit more mystery, because it is always very suspicious when you have like 7+ mana and you go, all right, I'll just pass real quick.
I will pass my turn. I have nothing.
Moving on to cuts, though, I just want to talk about one thing really quickly. Stop putting Temple of the False God into precons. There's just so many pips in here that you need, especially for the morphs. I don't want Temple of the False God in here.
Not a fan. That's a bonus cut. That's free of charge. Well, Tascum? What is this card? Tascum?
Tascum?
Hellscound. There was a typo. Our prompt reader is clearly typoed here. This is just like a card that is its own commander. It wants dogs, and there's like this weird sub-theme. I'm really not interested.
I'm not either. It helps if you have +1/+1 creatures and you get red mana for all of the attacking creatures, but this just doesn't really fit in my opinion. I just really think that the dogs would really play a part in it, and I think that it would be better as its own separate commander maybe, but I don't think this is the home for it.
Yeah, Ransom Note's kind of a funny card. I think it's flavorful for this set, but this is not worth really your time at all, especially since we can get cloaked creatures very easily. We can pay 3 mana or less for morphs or cloaked creatures or disguised creatures at any point, so I'm not really interested in this. And also, how complicated is the Ravnican language? Because if I'm remembering the art of this card, there's like 12 letters on it. What could the Ransom Note say? Is it just like, I have your son? That's all I can really say.
Give me money?
Give me money? Yeah, that's probably what it says. Or each letter is like a whole sentence.
Maybe, but yeah, it's 3 mana total. It's 1 to play, 2 to actually use the effect, and for that, I'd rather just put in Wayfarer's Bauble because these morph costs get expensive. Also, Imperial Hellkite is another one I'd cut from here. It tutors up a dragon, but between this and one other dragon, those are the only 2 dragons in the deck, so it might just be a whiff if the other one's already dead.
Fell the Mighty, kind of a terrible board wipe. I don't want my board wipes to target creatures. That creates a little bit of a scenario where they can respond and target your creature and get off the board. And also, it just doesn't always destroy everything. If you have a good creature that's big, that's really not good, this board wipe doesn't really do anything for you. So there's even situations where you're winning, where this card can't even help you out. I don't like Fell the Mighty at all. And Stare at the Viper's Fang, is it because our commander taps and we can like untap it and do some more stuff? It just doesn't feel worth it.
Yeah, because if it's untapped, it has hexproof. If it's tapped as Death Touch, I don't think that really matters for anything we're rocking with here. Moving on to number 3, it's the Blame Game Precon at $43.99. The commander is Nelly Borka, Impulsive Accuser. She is 2 red-white for a 2/4 with Vigilance. When she attacks, you suspect a target creature, and then goad all suspected creatures. Suspected creatures means it has menace and can't block, which is a little bit hard to represent.
Pretty hard.
Whenever 1 or more creatures an opponent controls deal combat damage to 1 or more of your opponents, you and the controller of those creatures each draw a card. I think this is a really cool mechanic, and I am happy to see Boros Goad getting some love, love you Bailoff, but I do think that keeping all the suspected creatures and goaded creatures just like in my head straight is a little bit confusing.
Yeah, sometimes suspected creatures are goaded, and sometimes it's like, this is another mechanic where I'm just like, oh boy, this is a lot to keep track of. Wizards, when they make new mechanics, they are ready for you to have to refer to like a pocketbook of what that actually means. And we'll get into that maybe in a short or something, but this is about the Precon, which is pretty dang cool. Let's go over the reprints for this. So we, of course, using Cartina prices. Fiendish Duo, $25 on this one. This was like not really reprinted. It doubles the damage that your stuff would deal.
I really love the fact that they are utilizing the Precons in here, and the Precons are a very reasonable price to put in some really awesome reprints that we haven't seen in a while.
Yeah, more than half the Precon. $25. Just flip this thing right away.
I love to see that. There's also Comeuppance at $8. I'm just really, really excited to see this.
Yeah, Lord of the Third Path, total white staple. So this is down to $5, and it's going to be readily available in these precons. I hope that it goes down to $2 one day. But the fact that it was a rare, not an uncommon like Rex Sage has me, it's going to be a little bit pricier.
But I feel like eventually it might get down there. Smuggler Share is also a good one, which originally got printed at a precon.
Remember when it was $33?
Oh, I remember. I remember selling a promo one for like $100. And no, that was good for me.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, dang. Yeah. Must be nice.
But I am happy to see a little bit more card draw, especially in Boros.
Yeah, Darien, King of Keldor, $3. Just kind of, we're petering out a little bit. We had one big reprint. And this is the worst of these precons for the reprint quality, but the quality of the deck itself is higher than here's a bunch of morph creatures and some cards from the new set.
Hope you have 20 mana.
Right, hope you have 1,000 mana and your morph creatures can win the game. But this is like, okay, we're goading, we're suspecting, we get a little bit of like, Nelly Borka kind of has evasion. When she attacks, if they have one blocker, you give it suspected, and now it can't block, so that she just gets through.
I do really like the idea of this. I just wish it was a little bit more cut and dry and easier to represent.
Top on over to the best new cards from this deck. Trouble in Pairs seems to be the card everybody's talking about because it's like $30 right now. 2 white for an enchantment. If an opponent would begin an extra turn, that player skips that turn instead. That's like flavor text. It's nice to have, but it's probably not very relevant. But whenever an opponent attacks you with 2 or more creatures, draws their second card each turn, or casts their second spell each turn, you draw a card. This feels like when we were just dogging on Smuggler's Share, this feels like the juiced up version because it's anyone doing anything at any time. So if somebody casts 2 spells over on someone else's turn, you still get their card off of it. This is interesting. If somebody casts an instant speed draw 2, you do still draw a card. So I think there's more applications here. After all of the like Archaeomancer's maps and Smuggler's Shares that we've had, I'm hesitant. I am not going to be buying this card for $30, but I'll keep my eye on it.
I want to see how this works too. I think this is quite interesting because, for instance, I didn't think Lotho would be that good, but he like puts in a lot of work for just people casting their second spell. But this triggers for more than just people casting their second spell. It's more creatures, it's drawing cards too.
But yeah, this card, I'm hesitant because you said Lotho is good, but Lotho triggers off of your stuff.
It does.
And monologue text is terrible, but I don't know. We don't know. This is a video within a video. Let's go to Redemption Arc. 2 and white for an aura. Enchanted creature is indestructible and is goaded. And if you're sick of it and all of its shenanigans, you can just pay 1 and a white and exile the enchanted creature. So it's like a super impetus.
I think that's a lot of mana to pay for this effect. Especially if you do want to exile, it's like, ooh, I don't have any remove in my hand, but I do have 5 mana remove a creature.
That's true. I wasn't even thinking of it as that. I was thinking of it as an impetus that can, in an emergency, remove the creature. But you could also play it as terrible exile spell to pay 5 mana to just get something off the board. If you need to, that's probably okay. If it's something like a Shield Red that's going to hit you no matter what it does. Yeah, this card seems okay to me. I'm interested for the Goat decks, but outside of that, maybe not.
I might try it in Baloth if the price comes down.
But we also have another card. It's another gotcha. It's Take the Bait. 2 red, white, instant. Cast the spell only during an opponent's turn, only during combat. You fog for your stuff. And then you untap all the attacking creatures and goad them. And then the person who attacked gets an additional combat phase. So weird. I think if someone's attacking you with everything, I don't think it really does that much. It feels like a medium kind of card, but I think where you could get bonuses is if you tell someone you have this and have them send everything at one person and then like one little thing at you and then give them an extra combat.
I don't know. I think this is pretty interesting considering it is 4 mana also and it's so niche. Like you can only do it during an opponent's turn. It's only during combat. Like at this point, I think I'd just rather play like Deflecting Palm or something.
Yeah, Deflecting Palm's in this deck and if you listen to our advice, it won't be in there for very long. How about budget ads, Mia?
For budget ads, one of them is Taunt from the Rampart. This is a great one because things can't block and you goad all of your creatures, and I think this is like a really cool card.
It's just literally perfect for this deck. You're going to get all the Nelly Borka triggers the turn you cast it because nothing can block. It's all goaded. You're going to have tons of payoffs for that, and in the late game, you just attack for a bunch of damage and win the game. Combat Calligrapher creates extra flying evasive bodies that can't attack you when they're forced to attack, and that just gives a bunch of more resources to you and to your opponents to then destroy each other.
People never kill this in time, and then there's a bunch of Inklings swarming the air, and you're still at 40 life, and they're at like 5. It's really amazing. Wayfarer's Bauble is another great one for this deck. Considering we are in Boros, we do need to actively put in ramp to make sure we can cast our spells.
Yeah, I was surprised the deck didn't have Wayfarer's Bauble or Knight of the White Orchid, which is our next recommendation. That's just kind of like a cheap creature, played in the early game, and it keeps you not ahead because you can't be ahead, but it helps get you from behind back to parity with them.
There's also Geode Rager too. Whenever you have a landfall drop, you can goad one person's entire amount of creatures, and since you're trying to goad the entire board anyways, you just say, hey, don't look at me, just attack elsewhere, it's fine.
Yeah, goad is an interesting mechanic, especially for building on a budget, because there's not really any expensive goad cards. They're all like $5 or less, so you could totally take this precon, throw $30 at it, and have like the best possible goad deck. There's not really a ton to do. We have some other options for you here in the non-budget ads, but I just wanted to point that out.
I do think goad is really fun, and since I have a $50 goad deck, I am not opposed to this idea at all. Go try it out, it's really fun. But for non-budget ads, we're going to help with the things that Boros can't always do. One of them is card draw. So Esper Sentinel, Ristic Buddy, is going to be a great ad for here, considering it comes down early and it'll help you draw a lot of cards in the long run.
It's also just an early play. This deck only had one creature that costs 2 mana and the rest cost 3 or more. So that just kind of triggers me, and I want things to do early, please. Delny, Streetwise Lookout, they're back again. They're doubling triggers. Nelly Borka has 2 power. There you go.
Aurelia, the Law Above, is also a great one in this deck. I feel like it's just made for this, considering it helps you draw cards, it puts damage out, you gain some life. Plus, like, that's a pretty good size like body for the amount of mana it costs.
Yeah, if you play Tom from the Rampart after Aurelia, you're getting a ton of damage and a ton of cards. We also have Don't Move. Goading in this situation is now turned into destroying because they're forced to attack, so when they do, they just die.
I want to put this in my bailout deck so badly. Iroas, God of Victory, is also a great one, considering it gives creatures menace, and it helps prevent damage so your creatures will actually survive longer.
Yeah, it's like all of your creatures are the bonus of Suspected, but they don't have any of the downside. It helps Nelly connect, and it helps you get through damage, and make it so that your opponents can't as easily block and trade off their useless creatures, so they can send them at each other instead. How about cuts?
One of the cuts that we'd like to talk about is Feather, Radiant Arbiter. It's really good with auras, but this doesn't really seem like the deck for it. I feel like it's better in its own deck.
Yeah, Anya, Merciless Angel, this card is bad, honestly. It's just raw stats. I feel like, again, she could be her own commander, but it's not good for this. Gideon Sacrifice, I just put literally garbage on the script. It's not literally garbage, but it's a fog. It's a fog that is contingent on a creature staying in play, so I'm never going to recommend that card.
Never. Also, Vow of Duty and Vow of Lightning are not great for this deck, considering neither of them goad, and that's the entire mechanic of this deck. Get them out of here.
I guarantee they're only in here to make Feather more justifiable, but we're cutting Feather, so get the whole gang out of here. That's 2 decks down and 2 to go, and I would say if you like these decks and you're thinking they're going to be cool, and there's 2 cooler ones yet to come, you can actually enter to win these for free with Whatnot. Mia, tell them about it.
Whatnot is the top live shopping platform for Magic and all other trading card games, and we have a link in the description below, and you can get $15 for free to spend on whatever you want on the platform.
The link.
Absolutely. We're actually going to have a show February 10th, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where you can win these collector boosties and an entire deck that we draft and then make on stream.
Yes, it's going to be super sweet. We're giving away all 4 precons, like Mia said, collector boosters. Every 5 minutes we're going to be giving away a collector booster. And we're going to build a deck out of a play booster and then give that away to whoever is our luckiest winner of the day. But it's going to be so much fun. Definitely check it out. Definitely use our link to get some free credit to buy stuff with.
And you can bookmark our show if you go to our profile. It's Nitpicking Nerds on Whatnot, and get a notification when we go live so you can win some sweet stuff.
And we're going to move on to the next precon. This is the second best precon. It is Deep Clue Sea. $63 for this precon. This one was really hyped up. The commander is Morska, Undersea Sleuth. White, blue, green for a 2/3. You have no maximum hand size. At the beginning of your upkeep, investigate. And whenever you draw your second card each turn, put 2 counters on Morska.
I see this being a lot of value in general. I mean, clues are giving you a lot of card advantage. Hi, Amber.
Amber's here.
Having no max hand size, and just in general, there is a lot of value in Bant.
Yeah, this deck is all about making clues, caring about artifacts, sacrificing your clues, getting value when you sacrifice your clues. And there's even a few extra win cons that the clue decks were lacking. Now that Amber has settled in, we can go to our best reprints from this deck. The reprints, the 5 best ones, only total up to about $42. So this one's lacking a little bit in that category. Adrix and Neve, $13 in that one. They're just a parallel lives. Super nice to have them because they were creeping up there.
Betty Brack's Zoologist is also a great reprint at $9. BZ has been wanting this one for a while.
This is good. This is a long time coming. Hopefully it goes down even further. Coma, Cosmos Serpent, actually $10, and it's good to get this one back in circulation. How about your favorite card?
Oh, Farewell. I'm so excited that it's back here. It was like keeping value from Doctor Who and from Kawigama, and it's still $6.
Finale of Revelation, also $4. Kind of surprised that this was more than $1 because I haven't really looked at this card at all since it came out, but for those who are waiting to pounce on it, it's like half the price it used to be.
But there are some awesome new cards in this precon. One of them is Knowledge is Power. 3 blue and white for an enchantment. Creatures you control get +X/+X, where X is the number of cards you've drawn this turn, and you're going to be drawing a lot with this deck.
This is sweet. This is like a blue-white way to overrun, and it's not Cathar's Crusade, so you don't have to keep track of like as much. It's pretty cool. I love the fact that this works with clues or just any deck that can draw a bunch of cards in as a bunch of creatures. Like, super awesome. On the trail, also, 1 in a green enchantment. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, you can put a land from your hand onto the battlefield tap. This one is interesting. I don't know if this card is horrible and horrendous or interesting and can be a role player in certain decks. I'm excited to see which one it ends up being, but you know, it could be bad, but I like having hope in these new sets.
I want to see this. I think it'll be really, really good, considering it does come down for only 2 mana, and you can trigger on other people's turns.
Yeah,
that's like pretty sweet.
Cheaply draw 2 with like a quick study or something. That also gives you like, it turns quick study into Eureka moment.
I really like this. Tangle Trove Kelp is also a great one. 5 blue for a 6/6 with Ward 2. At the beginning of each combat, other clues you control become 6/6 plant creatures in addition to their other types until end of turn, and you can pay 2 and sack it to draw a card.
Because it itself is a clue.
I think that's really funny and thematic. I really do like that.
It's a way for you to win without combo and like, you know, Cart Clan Ironworks shenanigans, which is always great. That's fine. But this is a, you know, Tangle Trove Kelp and Knowledge is Power give the clue decks ways to just overrun the enemy basically because of their clues. Their clues are being weaponized. So like that's something that this deck totally offers. So I can understand paying the extra premium on this deck's price over the other ones just to get like a functional clue deck. You don't have to buy much else.
I really like this considering the last time artifacts like became creatures was like the displaced dinosaurs thing. And that was cool, but this keeps doing it on every combat, which I really like.
Yes, 5 budget ads for this. Obviously, I don't know how they forgot this, but Thraben and Novice Inspectors, they make clues for 1 mana. Come on.
Forensic Gadgeteer is also a great one considering you're going to be popping the clues for cards sometimes, so why not reduce their cost by 1?
That makes it so that you can pop twice as many clues as you normally could. Martha Jones, you're never going to see that in a precon. This is a clue sackable things. When you sack clues, something becomes unblockable. Potentially a win con if you get big enough creatures, or it just chips in damage and also gives you a clue. Like, this card's pretty sick in this deck.
I really like the fact that it can go either way. Tamiyo's Journal is also a great one because I remember this coming out when I first started playing Magic.
Back in the day.
And if you're going to be making a ton of clues, why not tutor for them anyways?
Triple clues equals demonic clueder?
We can write that on the card.
We can write that on the card. Kellen, Inquisitive Prodigy. It's a new set. He does clue stuff, so you might be interested in him. A lot of the reason, like, Novice Inspector and Forensic Gadgeteer and Kellen aren't in this deck, despite being shoo-ins for the deck, because Wizards wants you to go look at the new set and go, oh, I could add this, this, and this. So these are those cards that you can bring straight from the new set into this deck. Kind of like the Gold deck we talked about. Clues decks are not very expensive money-wise, so you could build a really functional clue deck for, let's say, $100 if you buy this deck for $63. Fill out the rest to $100. You can get a real stew going.
I really like the fact that they are giving really nice budget shells for decks that can still hang with some of the more expensive decks too.
Yeah, how about the non-budget ads?
One of the non-budget ads we have is Lavinia, Foil to Conspiracy. It gives mana for clues, which is really helpful considering we're going to have a lot of clues that we can pop.
Yeah, Anointed Procession and Mondrak, Glory Dominus, they seem pretty obvious. You know, they double your clues. If you're making other tokens, great, you double them too. Mondrak even has an indestructible clause written on him, and we did mention before, not on this list, but let's make it on this list, Displaced Dinosaurs turns all your clues into 7/7s.
And that's going to be a lot of power too. KCI, Cart Clan Ironworks, is going to be your combo enabler if you want to go that route, but if you don't, it'll still sacrifice artifacts to gain you lots of mana.
It just says instead of paying mana, you can sacrifice 2 clues to just draw 1 card. That's basically what it says. Also, Inventor's Fair, if you want to search for KCI or Tamiyo's Journal or some other nonsense to trigger your clue things, or even the clue win con we just talked about, the Kelp Wall is an artifact. You can use Inventor's Fair to tutor for it in a land slot.
But moving on to cuts, one of them is Hornet Queen. It is 7 mana, and that is not a good rate, and it's not even thematic to this.
I don't know why they love Hornet Queen so much. It's turning into like the new...
it's Temple of the False God or Zatalpa for green.
Just leave it alone. We don't need it. Hydroid Crisis, we have so much card draw that I don't think we need to go to this. This was a great standard card, and it's good in 1v1, but I don't think it's very good in Commander.
It's not great here. Simic Signet too, and just any Signet that runs green, we're in green. We can ramp with land, not Signets.
Wizards, you insult me. Green mana and Signets? That's not going to work. Magnifying Glass also That's not in there because it's a mana rock. It's in there because it's a thematic card, but it's also just very bad, so I would take it out. You're never going to need to pay 4 mana and tap this, which is basically 5 mana to make a clue. We make one for free with our commander every turn.
We're going to make so many, we're going to not even need that, so get it out of here. And Selvala, Explorer returned. I'm not big on group hug outside of dedicated group hug decks, and even then I'm not big on them.
Yeah, and like, we don't need to draw cards with Selvala because we're drawing cards with our infinite clues. So this deck does not need that type of card draw. Same with Hydroid Crisis. Maybe they go in other decks, certainly not in the clue deck. And there is one more thing I forgot to talk about this clue deck specifically. It's Moxfield.com. Get bamboozled, audience. They're the best way to build decks online, whether you're building from a precon or not. Moxfield has a Wizards of the Coast account with the official precon deck list, so you can always know what exactly was in the original precon without having to guess if, Pencil Lover 458's deck is actually the precon. You just know that they have what they have.
I love it because they do keep the printings up to date on those two when the deck is actually released, so you can see in real time how much the deck is worth on sites like Redacted or Card Kingdom, our favorite place to shop online.
Absolutely. Moxfield, that's the place to be. But we do have our number 1 precon to get to. This is the most exciting one for me by a lot. Number 1 is Revenant Recon, $49.99. Pretty good price for this considering what we're about to get to. The commander is Mirko, Obsessive Theorist. 1 blue-black for a 1/3 flying vigilance. Whenever you surveil, put a +1 counter on him. And at the beginning of your end step, you can return target creature card with power less than Mirko's from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. That means if it would die, exile it instead. But you want to surveil, and then when you do, you get to reanimate stuff. And I love this design because it's not the enabler staple to the payoff. It's you have to surveil somehow. Mirko does not surveil. If he did, I'd be less interested. But this is like an interesting commander.
I think it's pretty interesting, too, that they're bringing back finality counters, considering they did first start it with the brass unsinkable of the last set.
Yeah, also something to consider with this, just in general, not for this precon, but Mirko says less than his, and he starts with 1 power. So right off the bat, you can get back clones that are 0/0s.
That is super sick. I really like that. But this deck actually has so many reprints in it.
So many.
One of the best ones overall is a card that we love playing, Rise of the Dark Realms at $18. Reanimating everyone's stuff. I've had just a win on the spot because people have had combo pieces in their graveyard, and I've just reanimated and they go, oh, wait, you just win.
Yeah, if I had to guess, this precon is going to demolish the other precons if you just played them heads up against each other. Having big, giant win conditions like this, that is so good for a precon, and it's $18 card. It's an amazing reprint. Necromancy is a card that has never been reprinted in a non-crusty black border version. $14, and for some reason, it's just here. So this is like, if you wanted to update your Necromancies, this is kind of what you need, because I hate looking at the other version. The text isn't necessarily right. It's just long and drawn out. This is a much cleaner version in like every possible way. Thank you, Amber. I love that Necromancy is just kind of in this precon.
I really love it too. I actually need a new copy considering mine is old and crusty in Kalia. Reanimate is another great one in this deck. I'm so excited to see this quality of reprints. $13, just putting things onto the battlefield at 1 mana?
Can't be beat.
Anybody's graveyard too.
It's literally the best like single target reanimate. We also have Phyrexian Metamorph, $6. We mentioned it works super well with Mirko. So synergy, power. You could flip it for a couple bucks if you buy this precon and you don't want it. It's just got everything. And Sphinx of the Second Sun, one of the most confusing Magic cards of all time, $4 in this deck. And another thing that was in this deck is Animate Dead, which just kind of brings me to what makes this deck such hot fire is you have all these surveil cards. They're not necessarily the best, but they are putting cards into your graveyard. And then you have Mirko, and literally like the 5 best reanimation spells in the format. You get Reanimate, Animate Dead, Necromancy, and Rise of the Dark Realms as a finisher. It's like, what were they doing? This deck is just like spice to the max.
I am so pleasantly surprised to see by Amber that this deck has so much fire packed into it.
As for the best new cards, there's a few bangers here too. We got Final Word Phantasm, 2 and a blue for 1/4 flash flyer. During each opponent's end step, you can cast spells as though they had flash. Really weird. I like that it's not just you have flash for your stuff, but this has flash, and it's kind of just like an interesting little card. I think this is cool for certain decks.
Yeah, I definitely think this is really cool, and it comes down cheaply too. Case of the Shifting Visage is also a great one for 3 mana. At the beginning of your upkeep, surveil 1, so there's the actual enabler. To solve it, you have to have 15 or more cards in your graveyard, but that's what this deck wants you to do anyways. And if it's solved, whenever you cast a non-legendary creature spell, you copy that spell. So you can only solve at the beginning of your end step. So if you do have something like the Flash creature and casting stuff with Flash, you can just copy stuff starting at the end of your turn, which
Right,
I
yeah.
think
If
is
you
super
solve
cool.
this, then on other people's end steps, you can flash in, I think it's supposed to be Columbo or something, and then you get those benefits. But this is like a really powerful little effect if you can solve it quickly. Obviously, the card does almost nothing, but with surveilling, with milling and stuff. We also have a weirdo. Eye of Dusk Mantle, 7 mana, 3/8. It's an eyeball with 8 toughness, makes 0 sense. Flying and lifelink, and you can play lands and cast spells from among cards in your graveyard you surveilled this turn. If you cast a spell this way, you don't even pay its mana, you pay its life cost equal to its mana value.
That's really weird, but looking at all these cards, I'm thinking, can you finally make Oscar not super sweaty if you have this as a shell?
I might go in. There might be enough payoffs for Surveil. There's ones we couldn't even mention. Surveil's back, baby. I'm glad they did the errata to bring a lot of more cards into the card pool, like Curate, and B, they gave you like 3 or 4 more payoffs so that it actually makes sense and you have a reason to play Surveil for this deck.
But we've got some awesome budget ads. One of them is Factor Fiction, considering it'll help you draw some cards and you could fill the graveyard, which you have so many good reanimation spells, you're going to be able to get value from both.
Oh, it's going to be so great. When you hit a reanimation target, they don't want to just give it to you because it's a really powerful card. So they try to stack it so that you don't pick it, and then you take the pile with 3 cards, and then you just end up reanimating it anyway. It's so funny. And this deck was lacking a little bit in card draw, so keep an eye out for that. Sanguine Spy, it is a repeatable, easy way to surveil, so that's really good with Mirko. If you wanted to add some more like, fodder creatures like Bloodghast or Nether Trader, you totally could, just to make this trigger a little bit, and it is a little bit of extra card draw.
Search for Adscanta is also a great one, considering there was the Surveil errata, and this comes down really cheaply and will flip pretty easily, I'd say.
Yeah, we can flip it. We can do it. Unmarked Grave is also a way to tutor if you've got these crazy, awesome reanimation targets, and you're going to upgrade and put some in this deck. Get the tutors in there, so now you can just go Unmarked Grave into one of your already premium removal animate dead spells that you have, and get it back right away on like turn 4.
Hullbreaker Horror is also a great reanimation target, considering it is pretty budget, and it has been in a precon before. It's not outside of the realm of like power that precons are usually packing.
This card is messed up. I think maybe it is outside of the realm of power for precons, but like they've put it in precons, so at least in Wizard's Eye, this is a precon level card. Get it in there. Non-budget ads. Takanuma, Abandoned Mire. This is one of the first ones I thought of just because it's sick graveyard value. It's a nice land, so you're not really cutting a spell for it. It just gives you a lot of like buttons and knobs to turn.
Plus, replacing it for a swamp, I mean, that's the easiest swap ever. It's almost an MDFC.
It puts the swamp in swamp.
Toxeril the Corrosive is also a great reanimation target. This is brutal. We've talked about it a little bit in one of the previous videos, but this coming down and just wiping the board, basically, and giving you a ton of slugs that you can turn into cards, too. It just does a little bit of everything, and it's really nice.
You can't beat this card. You can't beat this card if it stays out. So Toxeril's amazing, and the cool thing about Toxeril is that you don't always have to start over. The slime counters remain on. While Toxeril, if he dies, we can reanimate him again. The slime counters, if our creatures have, the creatures they don't control have 3 slime counters on them, Toxeril comes back. They're -3/-3 now.
That is really cool. Archon of Cruelty is also another great reanimation target. I have got by this from your Oscar deck like at least a few times.
You just spam it and you attack with it and you just get serious mega ultra value town, and it just feels amazing to be you when you have this card in play. Drown in Dreams lets you draw and fill the yard when your commander's out, so you can go like, oh, I'll increase the number, like my selection to reanimate with Mirko's ability, and I'll draw some cards to keep my hand full.
Conspiracy Unraveler is also a very flavorful add in here, considering you can collect evidence 10 instead of paying mana for your spells, so that really works well with Surveil.
Totally flavorful. This isn't even that non-budget. I needed another card, and Surveil, like these other themes, is heavily represented in budget cards. So I'm like, it's a great problem to have, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, these are great shells for your actual budget decks if you are thinking like, I don't know where to start with budget because it's pretty tough considering budget is not what I'm used to. These are great places to start.
But every precon's got some cards that are kind of just random, and we're going to cut them. Like Brainstorm seems unnecessary. We're not really trying to stack the top of card of our deck. We're trying to surveil. I guess you could put Reanimators back on top so you can put them in the graveyard. Kind of complicated. I'd rather just have another surveil card.
Afara's Dispersal is also one that I really wouldn't put in this. We played in Standard, it was fine, but in here we're playing Commander. The rate is not good enough.
Yeah, Charnel Serenade, and it's a new card, but it's a little expensive considering it's paired against the best Reanimators in the format, so we don't need it. Whispering Snitch is a surveil payoff, but it only deals 1 damage to them and gains you 1 life once per turn. So this can't be a win con. It's just like an inconvenience.
Marvo, Deep Operative is a cool card, but it's a different deck entirely. This is a surveil deck. That's not for it. Let's just cut it out and make a different deck for it.
So the murders at Karlov Manor Precons. We've got the worst one, Deadly Disguise at $44. The next one up, Blame Game, also 44. Number 2 is Deep Clue C at 63. And the top precon by a mile is Revenant Recon at 50. Add those all up, it's a little bit under 200, so that 180 deal on Card Kingdom doesn't seem so bad. I would check it out if I were you. That's a little bit of a discount.
There's some really awesome mechanics here. There's an amazing amount of reprint value in these 4 decks. So if any of them strike your interest, go to Card Kingdom, pick them up, and use our link in the description.
And if precon reviews are what strikes your interest, there's a Lost Caverns of one, Ixalan one right here.